Hello, welcome to another battle report. I am Pseudonymster, and this is going to be the second round of the IGL tournament that just concluded a couple weeks ago. I am playing Corregidor. My opponent is playing Vanilla Ariadna, and this is the map we're playing on, which I think is a little dense, but I was prepared for that because TTS maps tend to be a little dense. We rolled lieutenant. I think I chose deployment side and he chose to go first. In that order specifically, I know I chose deployment side and he went first. I just don't remember who made which decision first. So let's talk about his. Let's talk about the mission real quick, right? Because Frostbyte has a lot going on. It has, as far as stuff on the map, it's got 3 of these consoles, and it's got 4 heating units, 2 on his side, 2 on mine. Everybody's going to die at the end of the game unless they are in a heated area, which is what the heating units are for, or they are a remote, or a tag, or HI, presumably because remotes don't care about the cold, and HIs and tags have heated power armor and are super cool. Or last way is if you are the hazmat operator, that we each pick one on our side at the beginning of the game, and I forget it 9 times out of 10. But we remembered this time only after a little bit of playing. Um, so yeah, the goal is to flip consoles. Whoever flips more consoles gets more points. The consoles turn on the heaters because they're not on at the beginning. And the regions that those heaters are in will no longer die, will be heated, right? And the units in them will no longer die. The back one heats the entire deployment zone. The one slightly outside of the deployment zone heats the dead zone, which is the 4-inch band between the exclusion zone and the deployment zone. And there's an exclusion zone, so things like Morans and parachutists and other infiltrators can't go into the middle area, which makes me sad because I have Morans, but we'll get to that. So on his side, his reserve, we'll take it off real quick. On his left is back corner. He's got this like walled off corner that he has a Highlander chain rifle in. There's a tractor mule, the Ergon, watching from his perspective, the leftmost console. He's got right next to him a dozer, the Kiebervolk dozer, that has a turret that it can pop out. I think it's AP. No, just a rifle, it says. Uh, just outside of his deployment zone, we have 2 camouflage markers, both prone, which tells me that they might be decoyed. I know they're definitely not mines at the very least. More center of his deployment zone is a motorized doctor. Speedy specialists are very useful, and these guys are 8-4. For when you have to run to the middle and push a button, that is like 2 orders. It's great. Almost dead center, we have his Kiebervolk. It's the Crazy Koala one. I am not familiar with these guys at all because they're new, and I was surprised it had Crazy Koalas, but it does. It's kind of backed by the heating unit in his zone control. Then he has 2 Naufs because they have decoy. He's watching this shorter lane in the center that goes out like not even 24 inches with this one, and he's got kind of a right angle that goes out, 21 inches, and to the left he's got not much actually. Maybe if you're all the way over here and standing. And then his other one similarly doesn't see very far. Um, which, it's an active turn piece. Maybe that's intentional, but this map has a hard time for units that have long range bands. Snipers, missiles, uh, getting beyond 24 inches in this map is hard, which I think is a mistake. When I think when you set up a table, there should be spots a sniper rifle is going to be useful in ARO. I'm sure there are spots that aren't super obvious to me that I'm missing, but they're not going to be super relevant, right? Like, even if there's one band, it's going to be super narrow, easy to cautious move across, easy to throw smoke for, easy to just get around almost trivially. Sniper rifles are expensive guns. Missile launchers are expensive guns. They need to be more useful than on this map, in my opinion. TTS maps tend to be denser, which is, we'll get to my list in a moment, but why my list has nothing, no HMGs or anything long range active turn pieces. But yeah, that's fine. Nauf's here. He's a decoy, so one of these is real, one of them is fake. To his right, we have. Must have. I'm missing a Kazakh, vet Kazakh. He had a vet Kazakh with it's an APHMG right here by Nauf, but then a Highlander, a second Highlander, kind of on getting to the more right side of his deployment zone. He had a Vistral, which is the Neurocinetic AP rifle light rocket launcher. Again, he's watching this diagonal, but again, it ends up being, oh, that was on the ground. Ends up being like barely outside of 24 inches. And that's only if someone's standing at the very edge, right? Which people aren't going to. But light rocket launcher likes that, so it's not as big a deal for the Vistral as it is for Nauf per se, or any sort of missile launcher who doesn't have secondary weapon. And then far right, he's got an Apache. That was all he had, and there were missing slots, so I was pretty sure he had some sort of parachutist. And because I'm aware that Van Zant exists, I was worried about Van Zant. Kind of forgot Mirage 5 existed, which is scarier. But nonetheless, my deployment came. First thing I decided to do was, for the lulz, I decided to try and have my Moran. I have two, right? So I have two shots at this. I was going to put them here and their Crazy Koala here. Just have a repeater starting in an annoying spot and a Crazy Koala starting in an annoying spot. In retrospect, I don't think this could have gone here at all. I think stuff's in its trigger area and you're not allowed to use Mine Layer to start stuff in your repeater area. Having said that, kind of looking at the board, where would I have gone instead with it? Maybe up here? Maybe put like the Crazy Koala over here. I really shouldn't have just tried to over infiltrate, but I did, and I failed. And then I tried again with the second one, and I failed. So my Morans are on board edges in mildly bad spots. So speaking of my left deployment zone, I have an Aguacil behind this diagonal wall. He's my obvious lieutenant. I have no other lieutenant options in this list. It's probably a mistake. I'm probably still going to do it. That's just how I play. Moran that failed on the back edge. Now he's ready to watch this entire back edge. And by entire, I mean 3/4 of the back edge of my deployment because there's this crystal blocking off the rest. And he additionally sees to the left, like here, and a little bit to the right. Billy is at the front of my deployment zone, projecting repeater coverage. That was my reserve. Let's take that off there real quick. I had a Jaguar and Senior Massacre behind this raised area. This raised area also covers like at least a third of the table. It's huge, which looks cool, but I do think it does exacerbate how closed of a table it is. Nonetheless, Jaguar and Senior Massacre ready to duo over here. I put a Gecko, kind of push forward. He can see the we were playing these rails here. We played them as solid. That might have contributed to the denseness of the table, and they might have intended to be played true line of sight. But if I see these in a real life tournament, I would play them as solid. So that's what we did. Opponent agreed, and opponent brought it up. Nonetheless, Gecko can see both sides of this console and this console, assuming the person was standing. If they were prone, those rails would have covered them. You cannot see the console to the right. This shipping container is covering it. Behind him, we have the missile launcher. We have a flash pulse bot, and in almost dead center at the front of my deployment zone, also being a repeater, a baggage bot to the right of center, slightly right of center, and Jazz. You put them together because Jazz's pitcher loves it. Her cyber minds love it. Mildly need it for the Gecko's Panzerfaust, but they're kind of too spread out this time. But Jazz is great. Hacking Device Plus really helps mitigate some problems that you can have with ARO pieces if they happen to have MSV1. Just slap down white noise, and I love it. I should put her into a marker state more often. I almost always forget that's a thing. But she also has Trinity, so she has like all the hacking things except for Fairy Dust. Or the Evo programs and the reset one. Far right, we have McMurrow, Warcore, and the other Moran. McMurrow's ready to kind of run forward. This feels pretty safe from anything in his DZ. Again, this raised area blocks off any lines of sight that would be from his DZ down to here, unless he was standing up somewhere pretty vulnerable. The Warcore is watching a kind of long diagonal. This is one of the few places there is a long sight line, and I don't have a sniper, but I do have a Warcore. So he's watching the far left console from a different angle than the Gecko. And the Moran's just another repeater up front, ready to target things because it's Ariadna. That was all my deployment. He has a Uxia who he deploys up here, ready to do a murder at Jazz. And he's rolling on 16s, and thankfully for me, rolls a 20, ends up back here and revealed, ready to be irrelevant the rest of the game. My reserve, as was kind of obvious from before, is a second Gecko. I love the Gecko duo. I'm falling in love with the Gecko Harris. I ran it with the FTO Jazz, and I freaking loved that. Moving Jazz around feels great. I recently watched a Robert Cantrell, Robert Shepard? I think he goes by both names. He just did a Corregidor list. He has a YouTube channel. He's very good at Infinity. He's very knowledgeable about Infinity. Go check out his YouTube if you haven't already. If you found me before Robert, I'm impressed. Um, but in any case, uh, these are going to be a duo, and this guy is watching. Might have been slightly more to the left. He's watching kind of one side of the console on the far right because I don't have any coverage of it yet. And I'm hoping his Panzerfaust will be good enough. If something long range fights him, he can guts this way to not be seen. And then we're ready to go. I spend a command token. He spends a command token to do speedball. I spend a command token to reduce his second order pool. I asked what was in his second order pool. He said the robots, so the Ergon and the Vistral on the opposite sides of the board here. The two Highlanders, which are irregular, and his Nauf. Nauf is a scary enough active turn piece that I'm fine taking 2 orders away from him. It really, when you have a big group and a small group, a lot of people take away the orders from the big group. But I tend to take it away from the small group because if you take with this setup with 3 regular orders and 2 irregular orders, taking away 2 regular orders means Nauf gets 1 order unless he starts spending command tokens and the irregulars on the Highlander. It's real hard to do anything with 3 orders total anyways. So it kind of negates, the way I look at it, it kind of negates an entire pool of 5 instead of bringing 10 orders down to 8. He did also have stuff missing in group 1, so it was 8 orders. But yeah, took the second pool out. I do that quite frequently. I find it very useful. So he started with his Impetuous, and I believe this Highlander kind of moved to here, and this Highlander jumped behind this truck. It might have been here instead of here, but it jumped behind the truck, and I believe that was his entire Impetuous phase. He then moved, I believe he did Combat Group 2 stuff first. I think all he did was spend the irregulars on the Highlanders, move them up. I think this guy ended up here in prone. This guy ended up spending a couple of orders, ended up somewhere over here. Again, this game was 2 months ago, so might not be 100% accurate. But that was all that happened with Group 2. And then Group 1 started doing stuff. And that was Duroc, which, like I said, I wasn't really prepared for Duroc and Margot. I was mildly prepared for Van Zant, which is good. He ended up bringing him right here where my lieutenant, the Moran, and Billy can see. If he ended up going any further to the corner to hide from Billy, he would have seen, I think, Senior Massacre and the Missile Bot, and the Flash Pulse Bot. There was just a bunch of things he didn't want to see that way, so he had to take the Billy Flash Pulse. My reaction was Billy Flash Pulse, Aguasil shot, and Moran. I decided to drop a Crazy Koala. In retrospect, I probably should have Flash Pulse, because the Crazy Koala, he wasn't this close, I don't think. He put it in such a way that Moran couldn't base the Aguasil, because I'm obviously worried about him putting me into loss. And that's obviously what he's trying to do. He has correctly identified that the only lieutenant option is this Aguasil. He's got Duroc. He threw Duroc at the problem. What I should have done, probably, was a Flash Pulse. Because even though it's not great range bands, if it hits and if it goes through, Duroc's done, right? And I'm also got a secondary Flash Pulse from Billy. So that would stop his uh, rampage in its tracks. Whereas this stops a very specific kind of attack that he can easily dodge, right? He's fizz like 1.5 billion, 16. That same number, right? 1.5 billion and 16. Um, Anyways, I threw out a crazy koala. I also dodged with this jaguar. The I believe the shot went through and he took a wound. Not took a wound. And the jaguar got his dodge and peeked through this little curtain. Next order, I don't need to go by this order by order. Long story shorter, Duroc did Duroc things and took out the Alguacil after a couple of orders. And my Jag, I think, ended up trying to chase him down, and then Alguacil dead, and he ended up going back. And Billy popped out an EM mine, which I'm just going to use a regular mine, but use your imagination and pretend. So I had an EM mine on him, and he stopped here. And then he started doing stuff with camo tokens over here. He had some orders. He went somewhere like here with one order. Then he crossed this with another and managed to get, I probably did that movement. He went right here because he knew the gecko, he was trying to get out of the gecko's line of fire, I believe. So he got to here, and as that camo token crossed, this gecko saw, obviously has to delay, dodge, or discover. I chose to dodge, and I luckily managed to get my little. I rolled a 4 or something and managed to get the movement out of it and get right here. And that was important because now I can just see the camo token because I see both sides of the console, and he overshot the console a little bit. Um, he ended up don't remember exactly how it happened, but he tried pushing the button and lived, and then came back this way and died. He did eventually get this button. I don't remember if it was in. It was not in this first turn though. I think he just lost his, whatever this is called, a stray lock, and this decoy went away. Then Duroc. I think Duroc somehow ended up over here. The mine was out, but Duroc was over here. That was most of what happened on his turn 1. We get to the bottom of turn 1, or sorry, round 1, and I'm real sad because I've lost one guy, which is great for turn 1, but it was my lieutenant, which is terrible for turn 1. So I'm ready to spread all my orders out. I have McMurrow run forward and his impetuous. This Moran moves up. The War Core moves over here. Jazz uses her 2 orders to end up here and prone and shot a repeater. More like there. Move the Salute Zon over a little bit so it can cover Jazz better. I use the geckos both have tack aware. I used them to kind of get more central, and I shot the rock dead question mark. I'm pretty sure I took him out in one order. Mine went off when he did. Oh, what I didn't mention, Duroc, the very last order Duroc spent, I was like, oh, he was in a repeater the whole time. He could have been targeted. So eventually, people who are watching are probably like, you idiot. We've been screaming at you that you forgot to target him. And I did. I did target him eventually. Very last order, he activated, I targeted him. So it was a real easy shot. I was shooting on something like 19s. It was targeted, good range, doesn't get cover. So he just went away. He was gone. That was pretty easy. Second tack aware. This Highlander must have ended up over here somehow, because I'm pretty sure second tack aware, I like crossed this threshold and put him into dogged. The geckos ended up here behind this wall that's about 4 inches from the center line. Again, I have my rightmost gecko watching the right and the middle, and the leftmost is out a little bit to see kind of this line, to see the left console. I had the transductors on, move up. Reminder, I'm in loss of lieutenant, so everybody's spending an order. Senior Massacre, I moved up. Jaguar moved up. Billy moved up. Moran ended up somewhere. Sorry about the noise. Um, and at this point, I'm not thinking about Margot, and I 100% should have been, right? I knew she was there. I was just spending the orders I had. This Moran, I don't think did end up anywhere super useful. Instead of going here, I could have gone here, which is less useful, but tossed out a crazy koala. You know, something to cover the board more. I think I ended up over here. And the Jaguar was in a terrible spot. The missile bot spent its order missiling Duroc before I activated the geckos. That didn't work, but it spent its order. And I believe that was everybody. And if you've been counting my units, you know I'm short one, and I've got Carlotta in the wings, and I forget about her most of this game. She will pop on, but probably not at the best time. But that was largely my turn one, just moving up, being in lost a lieutenant. I killed the Highlander, and I killed his Duroc, and on his turn I had killed his Straylock. I'm doing okay for having been in lieutenant. We both have spent an order, and he's down more guys than I am, and neither of us have pushed the button. So we end up on top of round one. Trying to remember exactly what happens. I believe. Yeah, so his Highlander on the left here, I believe, spends its impetuous going here and throwing smoke. He throws the smoke somewhere around here, and that's ends up being a little too far. That was almost exactly where he threw it, I think, because there was about that much of a gap that my gecko could still just see through. Which was unfortunate for him because he wanted that not to be the case. I think that's the only impetuous order he spent. Then he used the irregular and threw more smoke to cover it better. And then he's had his doctor zip around to push the buttons, did push the button successfully, turned on his heating area, and then tucked in back over here. And so that I'm going to put a little marker over it, indicate that Ariadna successfully pressed that button. And one of the heaters was heated. Other than that, he took a fight. Did he take a fight with the gecko? Oh, Margot. Duh. Margot came on. I was like, something else happened. That's for sure. Margot came on, I want to say over here, where now that the Morans move forward, nobody sees that, right? And so he goes with Margot. He takes out my Salute. He fights the Warcore, who might have been in a slightly different spot. Not sure. Ends up seeing the Warcore. I think he ends up taking out the Warcore and the Moran, both. And he tries doing a decharge on the heating unit. I make all 3 saves. And I do think that's a bit of a trap, right? These are really hard to take out because they have 3 structure. And then according to this, they only have 2 armor. I thought they had more than that for some reason. But didn't work. And then he tries to start fighting my gecko here with Margot, which he, in retrospect, decided that he should have probably gone after Jazz. I agree. Jazz, anything not as hard of a target as the geckos, right? He's getting free shots, which, sure, and AP, and this is a great way to take out the geckos if he has to take out the geckos. But he doesn't have to take out the geckos, at least not right now, right? So I think he should have pushed this way. McMurrow's a hard fight, but you're outranging him and it's pretty safe. If that doesn't go the way you want, you can like tuck in and just be a pain in the ass. Anyways, he went after my gecko. He did a wound on it when he was shooting for free, and my gecko turned around and failed guts a little bit this way because the truck blocked him or something. And Margot hopped over this to see him. Something like this. And they had their little fight. This got her close enough to Senior Massacre, who I think actually ended up closer to here because Senior Massacre dodged. Or maybe it took 2 dodges. Anyways, took the fight with the gecko. Massacre ended up dodging up here. She fell back, but he was within 8 to use his EM grenade, which I don't think ended up mattering because the gecko got through. I think Margot just ended up unconscious again. Or not again, but yeah. But the gecko was largely fine. He did a lot of work taking out my right side. He could have taken my right side out completely, which would have, I think, been more relevant, right? But wanting to take out the geckos makes sense. So that was his turn 2. My turn 2, the smoke went away. These guys ended up targeted because they were doing stuff in zone of control. By these guys, I mean the Highlander and the motorized doctor. The McMurrow had gotten dodges over here from seeing Margot. And my Impetuous, I think he might have ended all the way up over here because I think my Impetuous brought McMurrow like somewhere where he could see the motorized. His Highlander was prone, and I laid a template across both of them and they didn't get, they like made all their saves. So I touched here and punched the doctor into oblivion. Highlander was dodging or something. I threw a missile at him afterwards and he died. And so I cleared all the stuff he had pushed forward on my right side. I then took Jazz and realized that she can't push this button anymore. So I took her and started moving her this way. She ended up right here. I just spent like one order on her. She did tow up onto a rail to throw a repeater kind of down here. Or maybe she just had to stand up. Either way, a repeater ended up over here somewhere. Doot, doot, doot. Again, I'm doing very little of the mission, which is one of my flaws. My new lieutenant, FYI, was Massacre. Probably shouldn't have had him be my arrow against Margot, but you do what you do. It's about this time that I remember Speedball exists. So I drop one next to this gecko to get him healed up. I drop one. I try to drop one somewhere else, but it ends up failing and going by Massacre. I think it's Nano Shield, but I think it's Nano Screen, but it's actually Nano Shield, which is very different and way worse, and understandably so. But I think I'm giving Massacre Nano Screen, the one that gives you cover permanently, and I'm stoked by that. This guy gets the healing one, and then he comes out to fight Nauf, which requires him moving up to here or so. Takes that fight. This gecko moves up here. Takes out Nauf. And what else do they? I feel like there was more gecko fighting than that. Yes, there was a lot more. Okay, so they continued to push forward because there was nothing else watching. The wounded one stayed back here, and the not wounded one pushed up to start fighting this guy and took up the rest of his orders doing that, and then falling back somewhere like here. I believe that was it for turn 2 for me. I did pull back with McMurrow again at some point. And Massacre took his nano screen, and I think I put him like right here and spent the lieutenant order to put him in suppressive. Which a terrible play if he doesn't have nano screen, and it's kind of, so it's hard to get to him, right? Because the geckos are kind of the first thing you're gonna run into, and they're almost full health. And then I think we're to the top of 3. And I believe this is when his lieutenant Kazakh, he calls down his speedball, gives one to the Kazakh here, and the switch on ends up going by his Apache. But he does this fight with the gecko. I end up getting pretty lucky. I'm on 2 10s and he's on 4 13s. I get pretty lucky, and it takes him a few orders, and he loses the Vita pack to put a wound on my second gecko. So they each have a wound at this point. And at this point, he's got like 5 orders left. So instead of giving him a free target, I just fail guts back to here. Then his Apache does some like crawling forward, because if he doesn't crawl, I think this gecko sees him I think he just tries to push forward with the Apache. I don't remember quite what happens with the Apache. But he doesn't get any more consoles. At some point, his dozer popped out a whatchamacallit, turret. Dude. Then it's my turn. I'm pretty sure I need to push buttons. And I move Jazz to group 2 so she could spend group 2 orders to do that. And then I have Tractor Mule also moved up at some point in time. McMurrow spent his Impetuous going this way and throwing smoke. I think the turret saw and they like pushed on the smoke, or McMurrow took a wound or something. Next, and then I used McMurrow's irregular order because by this time I was out of command tokens to go here, and I laid 2 templates across here, which took out the Tractor Mule, unconscious level, whatever. But he got murderated by I think Uxia threw a shot out. The turret shot him a bunch. He got shot long distance by something. Maybe the Kazakhs. Yeah, I think the Kazakh where he was just sees. Yeah. So this guy saw McMurrow over here and shot. Anyways, long story shorter, Tractor Mule goes unconscious. McMurrow dies all the way to dead. And the turret that was right there is perfectly fine. And I'm mildly annoyed by that, but it's fine. The geckos then start fighting Kazakh. And I have the cool idea to have the geckos create a wall, because I have orders for Jazz, and Jazz at this point has come up here and pressed this button successfully and, secured my back line. And I'm like, I want to get her to this side because I have 2 more orders left and she can have a shot at that. So I spent the attack aware on these, moving them forward to make a wall. They have a shootout with the Vet Kazakh. Vet Kazakh goes down. And the wall's no longer needed because the Vet Kazakh's down. But the wall's there, and I like the cute idea. So Jazz spends 1 order getting here, like here, and then 1 order to push this button, and fails. So I just get like a Robbie bot out and push it, and that's fine. Whoops, that's not what I meant to copy paste. I meant to put another one of these up. So both of my zones are safe. The line is like here somewhere, and all my units are behind it that are still alive. I'm doing good that way. And I have 2 classifieds, right? I am securing this HVT. Well, he's not securing mine. So that's 1 classified. I'm trying to figure out how to do data scan because I have a hacker. I think this Apache died somehow. But I have a hacker. I'm trying to figure out, and then I'm like, oh, right. I have Carlotta. And my other classified, this is data scan, my other classified is industrial espionage, which requires an engineer doing a whip roll on a HI rammer tag, and they get +3. So I have Carlotta. And I'm like, there's a tag just unconscious over here. Nobody's watching. This engineer was turned that, I think. Nobody's watching. I'll go right here. Walk on. I have exactly 2 orders, or 1 order left. She brings her own, and then 1 more order. So I walk her on. I touch the guy. I do the roll, and I fail. I was on a 17, because you get a +3, and I fail. And so that's the end of the game. I've got way more stuff left alive. I've got the only units in the exclusion zone, I'm pretty sure. And I've got more consoles done as well as one classified. So I think the game ended. I don't think he did his classifieds. I think it ended up being a 9-0 for me, which is great. But this was a great game. My opponent was super chill. The we let each other roll stuff back when we were under, mistaken impressions or whatever, and it was a good game. It was great. Yeah, but man, this table was rough, and geckos with burst 5 being in good range basically all the time is wonderful. Uh, yep, I did not feel like I was missing an HMG, even though I have nothing that's an HMG, um, which I think is a mistake. Again, HMGs are more expensive than Spitfires, primarily, in my opinion, because of their range band, not because they're one more damage. So the optimal range band, I feel, should be HMGs, not Spitfires. TTS tend to be Spitfire range band maps. It is what it is. I brought 2 geckos because of that. But yeah, so I've got another 4 of these to do for the remainder of the tournament. I at this point have tied one and a like 4-4 tie, which is like disappointing. You're like, one more point, I would have gotten another tournament point. But like a 4-4 tie on unmasking, and then a major victory on Frostbyte. Um, Frostbyte is a mission. I love Frostbyte. Um, I do a lot better in missions where you only have to get to the middle and hang out. If there's anything that requires me to go to your side of the board, I'm probably not doing well in that mission. Uh, but that's how it be. Um, Senior Massacre just chilling in the middle of nowhere in suppressive fire at the end of the game is silly. I could have been in loss of Lieutenant again if he had managed to kill him. But good game. And I will see you all next time. Bye.